Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Sam Verdugo. I'm a community educator here at Day One, and I have the great Irene with me. Irene, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Irene and my pronouns are she, hers, and I am one of the rap coordinators with Day One.
Awesome. Yeah, so today we'll be talking about how to build healthy relationships with your young people, whether that be your students or your children. And we're just gonna really like dive deep into how to communicate, also just like how to build trust, how to work through conflict. Yeah, so definitely please stay tuned. You can go to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So I just want to talk a little bit more about Day One before we get started. So Day One is an organization that helps young people 24 and under end dating violence. So whether that be like intimate partner violence or if they're going through maybe like cases of like stalking, any type of like emotional, physical abuse that they may be going through in their relationships, we can help support them with that. And how we do that is through like various services, right? So we provide social services, legal services, and also community education services. So kind of like the workshop today, we provide free resources for schools for young people to just learn more about dating violence, and how to keep themselves healthy and safe. And then in terms of like the legal services that we provide. We help survivors of IPV just like with any like court processings and also like obtaining order of protection. So if any of your young people are experiencing that, we could also like support with that. And then for social services, we can also provide therapy for young people who again are going through IPV. And if you go to the next slide, you can just like see a breakdown of, yeah, what I just discussed. And Irene, do you want to talk a little bit more
Yeah,
about
I
just
can talk about the RAP program. So
Mhm.
RAP stands for Relationship Abuse Prevention Program, and so I'm the RAP coordinator at my school, which means I run that program. Basically, I do like um, domestic violence counseling, and I do like groups and I do workshops like monthly to teach kids about healthy relationships in my specific school.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so it's a really great program. So definitely if your young people are going through something similar, please, yeah, feel free to reach out. And yeah, today we're just here to just like really get to the nitty-gritty of like healthy relationship building. So I want to talk first about community agreements just before we get started. Just like keeping in mind that this can be like a pretty heavy conversation, especially for survivors or even for folks who have witnessed IPV or DV in any form. Just want to like make that just clear, and wanted to go through some community agreements with everyone. So the first one being like what's shared here stays here, right? Like being mindful of protecting each other's privacy. Like if we share something like really traumatic in the space, being mindful to not share that outside the space, right? Because you may be putting someone else like in danger potentially or at risk. And also being mindful to be present and patient as much as possible. Learning to actively listen to one another without interrupting. Then there's also sharing the space. Like if you're constantly like participating, like making sure someone else that hasn't participated yet can participate and giving them a chance to do so. And then also sharing from your experience, like using I statements only. You don't want to talk for someone else's experience or just make generalizations about what they have gone through or how they may feel about IPV. So just, yeah, making sure to like bring your own perspective into it, but like not minimizing someone else's. So just again, you like using I statements. Yeah, would be super helpful. And then also I want to talk a little bit more about self-care and what that looks like, right? So, because this conversation can be triggering to some people, to some folks, I definitely welcome like people taking a water break, a snack break. Maybe if you're someone who gets very fidgety, like having a fidget spinner or even like doodling if you'd like, taking a breather, maybe taking like a step back or like a step out. Yeah, I definitely welcome those things. And yeah, please let's yeah, focus on taking care of ourselves too. So now we have like a really quick check-in question that I do like with a lot of students, a lot of staff. And it's basically like which Beyonce you're feeling like today. And I can start off. I know this is like being recorded, but I always like this question. So I'm feeling like Beyonce number hmm, like number one, but also number five. Like internally, I feel like one, but outside, I feel like I look like five. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling. The Beyonce where she's like, she ain't no diva. My
I would say that I'm feeling like a two myself. I am ready for the weekend. I have my little drink here.
yeah,
I'm excited. So, yeah, that's where I'm at today.
yes, yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing,
So,
Irene.
you are
Any
all more than welcome to pause this video and talk about how you're feeling if you want to just do a quick check-in.
yes, please do so. I always welcome that. And if you can't find the Beyonce that's here, just like feel free to just share out how everyone's feeling. Okay, so I'll pass it on to Irene.
All right, so we're gonna have our first discussion. So first we just kind of want to talk about like the start of relationships, right? So when you were younger, where did you see them? Maybe you saw them in your home. Maybe you saw your relationships with your parents, like their relationships with each other, maybe your grandparents, maybe your siblings, like with their partners, um, stuff like that. Maybe in media. Maybe you see it in the news, in TV, magazines, movies. We have some old classic movies there. We have Friends, like a classic TV show. Um, I would say, like for me personally, I saw a lot of relationships in like Bollywood movies growing up, and also like with my parents and like my aunts and uncles. Like that's where I saw a lot of romantic relationships form. And so, Sam, what about you? Like, where did you first see relationships?
Yeah, I definitely saw them in Disney movies a lot. I'm still like a huge Disney fan. And I think it's wild to me that those movies like were so ingrained in me, but also like in a lot of like young children that even like for Christmas it like becomes like rituals and things like that. Yeah, I would say, and also like telenovelas too, like the soap operas, just very dramatic, like very over the top, like toxic, passionate. Yeah, I feel like that's where I first like saw, yeah, this idea of like relationships.
Yeah, I think the point of that Disney movies is really interesting. Because I also like saw a lot of Disney movies growing up and I was like, wow, that just seems so realistic. Like, and then
Mhm.
now as I'm an adult, I'm like, that's crazy. That is that's
Yeah.
not realistic at all. And yeah, I think like Frozen was kind of an interesting take because
Mhm.
it was the first movie that was like, it's kind of weird for you to fall in love with somebody right from the get-go and you don't really know them.
Yeah.
And so I thought like that was kind of refreshing. I kind of wish I had that when I was a kid. But anyway, so yeah, the first one thing I would love for you all to discuss is where did you see these relationships and like what kind of relationships did you see and like were they healthy? Did you think they weren't healthy? What could have been improved? What was great? Yeah, so if you want, you're more than welcome to pause this video and have that discussion. Moving forward to the next question. So what kind of relationships were important to you as a kid? So when I was a kid, family was really important to me. So I loved TV shows that had a lot of um, family dynamics in there. So The Simpsons, I know, which is like a really like some people can't believe like they're like don't let their kids watch that. My parents didn't love it, but I did like that it was a family dynamic, and you could see like how the siblings interacted with each other, how the parents interacted with each other. I liked Bollywood movies where that was like a really big topic in there. So family was really, really important to me because I feel like that's where you learn a lot of stuff. So what about you, Sam? What kind of relationships were important to you as a kid?
I think I think kind of similar, like family. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think again, like it goes back to Disney, like those kind of like sitcoms and those like feel good movies. Yeah, I think just like wanting togetherness of like family. bonding, like spending time with one another. I'm trying to think of a specific show, but nothing is really coming to mind right now. Yeah, so I think like family values very similar.
Yeah, and I think like friendship also goes with that as well.
Mhm.
So for me, when I was a kid, I really loved Arthur.
I
Like the
love
aardvark, I
Archie.
loved Arthur. And so like there are family dynamics there that were really fun. And my whole family actually loved Arthur. Um,
Mm,
so the family dynamics between Arthur and his little sister DW, their
mhm,
youngest sister, Kate, like that was really interesting. And we thought that was relatable because I had an older brother, I was the middle child, and I had a little baby brother who came in like around that time when Kate was born, if that's how old I am. But um, yeah, and so like I think like that family dynamic, but also like friendships, I think was really important too. Like Arthur, like the friendships he had with his best friend, his group of friends, in the show Friends, like their interaction with each other, like Ross and Monica are related, but like the rest of them, like they're all just like friends. And so um my parents have a very close relationship with their friends, and so and like I'm friends with their kids, and like I think that was also really really important to me as well.
mhm.
So I would like everybody watching this video to think about like, so what kind of relationships were important to you as a kid? Was it friendships? Was it romantic relationships? Were you like, I really really want to be in a romantic relationship? Was it family? Like what kind of relationships were important to you? And then the next one, what did those relationships provide? So what did they provide, and what were they supposed to provide that maybe they didn't? So family relationships, I mean, some people have really complicated relationships. In my family, there's a lot of support, and I would also say like a lot of uh, like that push to like be the best, and so that was like really big in my family, and like that's what I got. Um, and so like what were like some families are different. Like maybe there's not a lot of support, maybe not a lot of emotional support or financial support or uh
Mhm.
just support in general. I guess it kind of depends. What about you, Sam? What kind of relationships, the relationships that you were talking about that were important to you, like what did they provide and what do you think was missing?
Yeah, so with family, not much emotional support. I found that later in life through friends and just like chosen family. Yeah, and I feel like I'm happy to say that now, like I have like a group of people that I really trust, that are like family to me. So I think yeah, I feel like those family ties may not necessarily like come from my blood family, but they have come from like chosen family, like friends, that like I really admire, that I love deeply, that have supported me and that I also support as well. So yeah, I think just like it's really has me like thinking too about like the breadth of like relationship building and how that can look like so different like throughout the course of everyone's lives.
Yeah, and I think it's also okay to acknowledge that like not all of your relationships can give
Hmm.
you everything that you need. I think that's a lot of pressure to put on one person. So I think it's totally fair to be like, my family does provide me with some support in some ways, and then I have my friends that support me in other ways. And I think that's important to acknowledge that. So thank you for sharing that. I can very much relate to that. So yeah, so I would love all of you to think about, so what kind of relationships were important to you and what did they provide? What was it that was important to you, and what were they supposed to provide, but they didn't? And maybe you got that somewhere else, maybe you didn't. So yeah, okay, we'll move on to the next slide. All right, there you go.
Okay, great.
How do I talk with my kid about healthy relationships? Everyone wants their children to grow up to have healthy, fulfilling relationships. When your kid is only in elementary school, that may seem like a long way off. But learning how to have healthy friendships and treat others with respect early on can help your kid navigate more complicated relationships, including sexual and romantic relationships later in life. Here are 4 tips on how you can help. Tip number 1. Take some time to think about what being a good friend means to you. Maybe that means someone you can always count on, or someone you always have a good time with. Help your kids set expectations for how their friends should treat them and how they should treat their friends. Kids learn so much by watching what we do, not just what we tell them they should do. So model being a good friend to other adults in your life, including family and relationships. Tip number 2. Teach your kid about setting and respecting boundaries. Teach them to ask before they touch someone else's body, face, or hair. Help them remember that no means no and stop means stop. And let them know that they get to decide who touches their body too. For example, if they don't want to hug auntie or have a tickle fight with their brother, they don't have to. These concepts are the building blocks of consent. Show your kid how you respect other people's boundaries and set healthy boundaries for yourself with people in your life. Tip number 3. Practice communication skills. Encourage your kid to take turns listening and talking. Coach them to use I statements and talk about how they feel. Help them see the impact of the things they say, both the nice things and the not so nice things. Set rules about name-calling, teasing, and physical violence so they know what's okay and what's not. And practice what you preach. Take time to listen to your kid, model good communication with other adults, and apologize if you hurt someone's feelings. And most importantly, tip number 4, let your kid know that they can always come to you for help, even if they're worried that you might get upset. Comfort, safety, and love are the most valuable things you can give your child. Want to learn more? Check out plannedparenthood.org/parents.
Okay, great. So I can move on to the next slide for you. Let me just. Oh,
How do I talk with my...
there we go.
All right, so let's deep dive into this video. Go to the next slide.
Slide. Okay.
All right, so first, we're going to talk about what are some traits or qualities of a healthy relationship. I do this activity a lot with my teenagers at my school, and I always think it's really interesting to see what they say. So we have a lot of students who mention like they want loyalty, they want time together, they want trust, empathy, friendship. They want to be friends with the person that they're dating. They want support, whether that be emotional, mental, whatever, like educational, if they want like someone they can study with, stuff like that. Independence, which often goes with like on the opposite side of time together. So like they kind of like we always have a really interesting discussion about that. They want good communication, they want honesty, they want affection, they want boundaries, space, respect, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so those are some of the traits of a healthy relationship. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Sorry, I think I'm freezing. Do you want to share your screen? We can just take like a minute. We don't have to.
All right. So these are the qualities and traits of a healthy relationship. And like I mentioned earlier, these are the ones that my students really love. If you have any that you can think of that you would like to add to this, you are more than welcome to pause this video and mention them and maybe add them if you would like. Okay, so looking at this chart, I would like for you guys to think about what are your top 3. So for me, I think I would look at this and say communication is top. I kind of feel like honesty goes with that, so I wouldn't say honesty. I would say communication, trust, and respect. I think in my like romantic relationships, those are the top 3 that I'm looking for. And so Sam, look, what about you? Like looking at this, like what do you think are like your top 3?
Yeah, I feel like my top 3 are definitely boundaries, like communicating boundaries with like my either partners in relationship or with friends. I think that's my top one. And then definitely affection. I always feel like with the people that I love, I feel like I'm affectionate. So, and also like receiving that affection is super important to me too. And loyalty too is another one for me. Just, like being like holding each other accountable, but also like yeah, still remaining like loyal to one another and having like that sort of type of like foundation and kind of like similar to trust, right?
Yeah, awesome. So for those of you who are watching this, I think it would be really cool if you pause this video and mention like what are your top three? And I think having a discussion of like what your top three are and noticing how they differ from each other. For some people, I mean, Sam and I have different top threes. So if you're a parent, asking your partner or your or co-parent or other parents in the room, what are your top three? And how do they differ from mine? And then if you're a teacher, asking your co-teachers or asking your partners, like, what are your top three? Here's what my top three are. And then comparing and just seeing like, oh, what's important to you? What's important to me? All right, so breaking down this video, the first step is to be a good friend. Um, so the first question to ask yourself is like, why do you want to be a good friend? We talked about the qualities in the other video in the previous slide of like what are the top three traits that we want in our relationships. Um, and so we should probably give that back, right? If we want something, you should put it out to the world as well. So if I want good communication, respect, and loyalty, I probably have to give that back as well, right? So I think a good question to ask is like, why do you want to be a good friend? A lot of people would say it's because they want to have good friends back. Maybe because they want to be a good person. There are a lot of reasons why somebody would want to be a good friend. So that's a good reflection question to have. Um, what do you want in a friend? I mean, you can look at the previous slide and think of all the qualities that we have. Those are great qualities to have in a friend, right? Respect, communication, boundaries. Those are great qualities to have in a friend. And then asking yourself, do you want the same thing for your child? If you're a parent, asking yourself this question. If you're a teacher, do you want these same qualities for your students? That's a great question to ask. And then how do you model these traits for your kid? So talking about like boundaries and communication stuff, how do you model that for your child? Maybe you would hope that your child would have a partner who communicates with them really well, but they need to know how to identify that first, right? So the first step is modeling that. And so the question would be, how are you modeling that? Do you think you can improve on that? Do you think you need to practice that a little bit more? Stuff like that. Okay, now I'm done sneezing. All right, so step two is setting and respecting boundaries. This is super, super important, and I think this is something that a lot of kids honestly don't know how to model these. So let's talk about it really quickly. So, what are some boundaries that a child might need to set? You can pause this video right now if you would like to take some time and think about it. Okay, so I don't know if you guys pause the video or not, but there are a lot of boundaries that a child might set. Sam, can you think of any off the top of your head? I know I can't, but I want to let you jump in
Yeah. Yeah, so I think some boundaries that children can set are, if a specific adult is wanting to touch them, like even like tickle them or like touch their face. Like I know a lot of adults are like, oh my God, your child is so cute, and kind of like maybe start petting them. Yeah, so I know like certain, people like certain children don't like that, and like makes them uncomfortable. They like immediately start walking away. I feel like I've seen those types of interactions, even like with babies too, like pinching the cheek,
Oh
so
yeah,
yeah,
definitely with babies.
Mhm.
I don't know about you. I have nieces and nephews, and my youngest nephew, there are big, big boundaries about like, oh, you cannot touch him, you cannot kiss him at like
Right.
I think up until 2 months because he doesn't have all his vaccines yet. But
Mhm.
then when kids are older, it's also like, their personal space of like, oh, I don't like to be touched. I don't like to be tickled. I don't want to hug this auntie that I don't really know very well.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of kind of boundaries that kids would have. Uh, could also be their time, their space, like things like that. So, what are some boundaries that you set with your child? Do you have boundaries of like, oh, kids are not allowed in mom and dad's room? Kids are not allowed, I don't know, to play with Play-Doh in the house. Like I know that's like a really popular one with my nieces. Or they're not allowed to play with slime in the house. Like there's a lot of different boundaries that you can put there with your kids. And then what are some boundaries that you set with your family and with your friends? So in this video, you're more than welcome, like I said, you can pause at any time and answer these questions. Like, so what are some boundaries that you have? I know sometimes we set boundaries when it comes to family, like extended family in particular. We set time boundaries. So like I can only spend a week with you. I can't spend a whole month with you. Uh, like around the holidays. Or with friends, like, hey, I'm down to hang out until like 10 o'clock today. Uh, with work, it's like, oh, I'm only here till 5 o'clock or so forth. So yeah, what are some boundaries that you have? And then how do you model those boundaries? So do your kids see that? Do your kids see, uh, yeah, mom is like really strict with her boundaries. Dad's really strict with his boundaries of like with work, you know? When I was a kid, my parents, they used to work, my mom used to have like a very strict 9 to 5 schedule. And so like I knew at 5:30 she was walking through that door. She was very, very strict with those boundaries. And I thought that was really, really helpful. So Sam, what about you? Are there any, do you recall like your parents having any boundaries and like how did they model those boundaries?
Yeah, one I think I remember clearly like the you talked about like your mom. I remember my mom asking me like to take the chicken out the freezer. And I would like panic because I knew it was kind of like similar. She came out back at a certain time and I would just like panic because I like didn't take the chicken out the freezer. So that was
Yeah,
like her boundary. Like, like I come home late from work, like, I'm tired. The least you can do is like take the chicken out so we can eat, on time. So I
sure.
think that was like the family one. And I have like similar boundaries too, like at work, like I end at a certain time, like 5 or 6. And after that, like I'm not available. With friends, I think my boundaries are like if I am really tired, but all of my friends are like going out, and I already said no, like I'm the type of friend that like I don't like to be like kind of like peer pressured into it. I'm just like, I already said no, like don't try to convince me. I know, well, some people do like that. I feel like if I already like made a hard no, I could be convinced, but I already like, yeah, if I said no, then it's like I'm going to bed.
Sure. I
Yeah.
definitely set some boundaries with my students. So I do have my number out. Like I have a Google Voice number that I use with my students so they can text me if they want to. I'm very, very strict with that. And because it is, I mean, students text all the time. If I'm sure they would text me all the time if they want to, even with emails and stuff like that, I'm like this. But I tell my students I'm available between 9 to 5. If you can contact me between any of those hours, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, I am available. I am there for you. After 5 o'clock, you will not hear from me. You will not hear from me on Sunday. You will not hear from me on Saturday. You will not hear from me after 5 o'clock exactly. You will not hear from me. Uh, that goes for my supervisor. That goes for my coworkers. That goes for Sam. You could probably test this. You can't catch me after 5 o'clock. But yeah, like, and I say that with my students as well. So teachers can also put these boundaries in for students, and it's important to show this so that students can see, like, oh, this is a boundary, and if I cross it, it's not going to work for me. So when kids text me at like I like over the summer, we have a summer program that we do, and I tend to talk to kids a lot. They text me a lot. If they text me at 9 o'clock at night on like a Wednesday, I'm not going to respond. They can text me however many times they want. I'm not going to respond. And they know that. And like and the next day they're always like, oh yeah, you really won't respond after like 5 o'clock. You will respond at 9 a.m. the next day. So I think it's really important to model that. So for teachers and parents, how are you modeling these boundaries and what kind of boundaries are you modeling? Okay, so we're going to talk about consent. Consent has a lot of different ingredients including FRIES, which is an acronym that we use to teach our students. So FRIES, it stands for F, freely given, R, reversible, I, informed, E, enthusiastic, and S is specific. So we tell our students if whatever consent you're looking for, if it doesn't have all of these, then it's not true consent. So let's go through this a little bit and make sure that everybody fully understands this. Freely given, it means that it's not coerced. It's not like there's no power dynamics. It's not like there's a gun to your head or anything like that. It's not like you don't feel pressure to give consent. R, it stands for reversible. You could take it back at any point. We tell our students, like, if you're in the middle of having sex and you decide you don't want to anymore, you can say stop and your partner should stop. Uh, if you are in the middle of making out with somebody, same thing. If you want to stop, you can stop, and so forth. Informed. I stands for informed, and that means you know exactly what's happening when you step in. I talk to my students a lot about like research and stuff like that. Like when you do research form, like you have like an informed consent form that you fill out that tells you like all the side effects and stuff like that. I think you could argue that with like a relationship too. Like when you engage in sexual activity or when you like engage to do something, you know all the risks, all the everything that's happening there. Uh, E, enthusiastic. That's pretty straightforward. We want a verbal yes. We want an excited yes. We don't want somebody being like, that sounds okay. Or like, I don't know, maybe like we don't want to do that. And then S is specific. So with consent saying, I specifically agree to this, I don't agree to something else. So if I agree to going over to somebody's house and watching a movie, that doesn't mean that I agree to having sex just because I say that I'm willing to go over and watch a movie. If I say I'm down to Netflix and chill, it doesn't mean that I'm down to have sex. That just means I'm down for Netflix and whatever we decide the chill part is, the chill part is together, uh, and so forth. Uh, yeah, so that's consent.
Yeah, and I want to show now this video about how a child can, just advocate for themselves and just, talk more about consent and what does that look like. Oh, I can't hear it. I think it's because you're unmuted. You're muted.
Wait, oh, sorry. How about this?
Hi, this is Yuri, and this is my mama, and 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 today this is our third living room protest.
Absolutely, our third living room protest. And what are we protesting today, Zorichin?
For picking up.
For picking up, as in you don't like when people pick you up, or you like when they pick you up?
Yeah.
Yeah, what? You don't like it?
Uh-huh.
You have to be clear about these things.
I don't.
You don't like when they pick you up?
No.
Okay. What about when they have your permission?
No.
Not even when they have your permission, you just don't like to be picked up. Why don't you like to be picked up?
Because I just, my mission is no.
Your permission is no. Okay. So no picking up kids without their permission. Can you say that?
No kids say no picking up.
Because no means
No.
no means no. So don't pick me up without my permission, even if I'm a kid.
And I also want you to stop when I want you to come. And when you touch me, I will say yes.
Okay, so when you say yes, then it's okay to touch me.
Yeah.
But when you say no, it's
Mommy,
not okay.
can I touch you?
Yes, you can touch me. Grand. Zuri, can I touch you?
Yes.
Absolutely. Tickle, 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 tickle. All right, well, that's our living room protest, all about touching and bodies and picking up and permission. Do you want to say, do you want to,
Do other one.
we want to do another living room protest?
Yeah.
Well, let's finish with this one first, okay?
That was so cute. I love that.
Yeah, I love this video so much. Yeah, it just goes to show that even like at a very young age, you can still like set boundaries, right? And even like young children can like give consent and also cannot give consent or even like change their minds about consent. So yeah, it's super important to just have that conversation and even just like guide them through like what does that look like? Like, in the video we saw the mom just like or the parent just being like very explicit, like, like what does that mean? Like you need to be clear. So the more concise you are like with boundaries and like consent, the better like you can communicate yeah, what you want in these relationships, right?
And I think one thing that I really liked about this video was
Do you want to go on
how
to the
she
next
didn't have
slide?
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say one thing I really liked about
Oh,
this
or do
video.
you want to add? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, one thing I really liked about this video is that when she said like, "Oh, I don't like to be picked up," and her mom was like, "Why?" And she was like, "I just don't." There's no reason that needed to be given. Like you're allowed to have boundaries. You don't have to give a reason. And like no is a complete sentence. So I thought that was really, really, really great. I thought that was like a cool example. So anyway.
Yeah, very.
Hi, this
All right. So how do we set a boundary? This is super hard. I know even adults who like struggle with this. And so we're gonna practice that. So let's practice our communication skills. Sam, if you want to talk about this part.
So when we're talking about communication skills and boundaries, it can, sometimes like lead to conflict, but it shouldn't have to, right? Because when you're setting these things, it's not necessarily conflict, right? Like I think certain people like may confuse boundary setting with like conflict and with like it being like a huge issue, right? When you're kind of just like stating what you want in relationships and like having conversations about them. And it's not typically meant to be like a big source of conflict or like argument, right? Um, but maybe like, in an unhealthy and a toxic relationship, boundary setting could lead to conflict, right? So like I just really want to like break down like what does conflict mean? What does it look like? Yeah, so conflict is very much a normal part of everyday life, right? Like there's conflict happening all around us, but at the same time there's conflict that's being like resolved, right? So you can find conflict in like family dynamics, like friendship dynamics, romantic relationship dynamics. It's normal to have conflict. The part that isn't so normal is when conflict is happening all the time and it leads to like really big arguments, like explosive, um, yeah, behavior, explosive temper, and when it makes excuse me, like one or the other person feel very like unsafe. So that's when like conflict is like turns into like abuse or like toxic relationships. But typically in like healthy relationship, conflict is resolved in like a healthy manner. So that means like that everyone is able to express their viewpoints equally, both or all people, even though that they're upset, they're able to have compassion for one another and like kind of like release judgment, or even if they do pass a judgment onto someone else, um like apologizing if they do so, like saying, like maybe I overreacted with these, like my reaction. Typically like one or all people like feel bad about what happened like during a conflict, an argument, disagreement, whatever, right? um and usually, in like healthier relationships, conflict is like moved past through. Conflict is like resolved. It's not being held on to. Like it's not turning into resentment or anger. It's used as a moment of like conversation and understanding one another. And it's basically just like coming up with solutions, right? Like if maybe there is a conflict of like um constantly crossing boundaries, then like what is the solution to that, right? And how do we like resolve that in our relationships? Now, if it gets resolved and there's a change in action and the person, you know, continues like to respect your boundaries, then that's a good sign. But if they continue to like disrespect those boundaries and cross them, then that's like a larger issue of yeah, potentially like an unhealthy relationship or like certain dynamics that could turn abusive. So that's just a little bit about conflicts. Did you want to add on anything, Irene?
No, I think you were great with that. I agree with everything that you said. Like it shouldn't be these big explosive fights, and everyone should feel understood and respected is the most important thing in these conflicts. So,
Yes, awesome.
all right. So we're going to talk about communication styles. So there are four communication styles that we often see. And you have a little guy there because what do you eat? Let's get pizza. So there's like just like different types of communication styles. So first we have aggressive. So this is somebody who dominates the conversation and pressures the other person to give in. So, I mean, I guess if we're taking this example of like, hey, like, let's go get pizza, it could be like, we're getting pizza. We're getting pizza right now. We're getting pizza tonight. And if you don't really have like a say in like what you want for dinner. Maybe you want Chinese, maybe you want wings, whatever. But it's like, we're getting pizza, we're getting a pepperoni pizza, and that's it. Nothing else. Then we have passive. This is when somebody lets others have their way, but then doesn't voice their own needs. So this could be like, what do you guys want to do for dinner? It's fine. Whatever you want is fine. And if the other person, let's say like you have allergies or whatever like that, and you're just like, it's okay, I'll deal. No, we don't want to do that, right? Like we want somebody who's like, a little bit more aggressive, but not super aggressive. Then we have a little bit of a combination between the two. We have passive aggressive, which I'm sure a lot of people like are familiar with this term, but maybe don't really understand what it means. So this is when somebody doesn't address what the problem is directly, and instead they're just trying to get back at the other person in ways that are completely unrelated to the initial problem, right? So let's say you and your partner are having a discussion about dinner, and like you feel like you're misunderstood, and instead of speaking up in that moment, you, I don't know, give them the silent treatment and just don't to them. That's passive aggressive behavior. It's getting back at the other person in a way that's like not really related to the problem, and it's not addressing the problem. So those are the key things that we're looking for in passive aggressive behavior. What we want is assertive. This is the exact kind of communication that we want. So this is someone who's clearly stating their needs, advocating for themselves, but also being respectful. So let's say, Sam, you and I are having this discussion about dinner. I'm saying like, hey, what do you hey, do you want to have dinner with me tonight? I was thinking of getting pizza. What do you want? And then I would leave the door open for Sam to have the conversation and say, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, etc.
I want spaghetti.
Sorry, can you say that again? I
Right.
think you paused for me.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying I want spaghetti.
You want spaghetti? Okay, how about we go to an
Oh, I
Italian?
think it would there was
What?
I think there was a delay on my end. That's why I didn't hear you until later.
Gotcha.
But
Okay,
it's okay. You
I got
want
you.
stick to Italian food.
I want pizza. You want spaghetti. Let's go get Italian food. I know a great spot. And if you like it, great. If not, we don't have to go there again. So cool. So that's assertive, being advocating for myself. Here's what I want, but also hearing Sam and saying like, oh, here's what they want, and compromising.
Perfect.
Okay. So this is step 3, practicing your communication skills. So we have a really great formula, and it's this that you see at the bottom here. It's I feel, the first part, the next part is when, the next part is because, and then what I need is the last part. So let's kind of break this down into like what this actually means. So the first part is saying, this is how I feel. Naming the emotion that you feel when somebody crosses a specific boundary. So you can say like, I feel angry, I feel upset, I feel left behind, I feel sad, I feel really happy when you do this, and so forth. Then you're gonna say when. So I feel angry when you do this, when this happens, when I forget that, whatever, so forth. Then you're going to say because. Why does it bother you? I think this is really important to say like why you feel that emotion, and saying what you need, what you want and value, and that's causing that emotion. I think it's really important to say that, because otherwise your partner doesn't know why. One thing I say a lot in my workshops is that like your partner is not a mind reader. They don't just automatically know you. These are things that you have to be explicitly said. So I feel angry when you don't respond to my text messages because I feel unheard would be like a classic example of this. And then saying what I need. So what I need, this is communicating your needs. This is super, super important. Like I said earlier, your partner is not a mind reader. It is important to share what you need explicitly so that your partner knows that. So saying what you need in order to feel comfortable, respected, and cared for. And then Sam, you're going to talk about this part.
Very, very need to process. Um, just for everyone to kind of like use and do their communication styles. So let's say maybe like if you're, sort of like or are mad, but you kind of like, don't really know um like the deeper reason for why you're feeling mad. So maybe like, what about the feeling of madness? Like was it that you felt hurt? Was it that you feel like the person, was maybe being selfish about it? Did you feel jealous? Or maybe like did you like think it was like more of like sarcasm that maybe someone else was like throwing at you? Like what about it, specifically angered you and made you mad? And I think these words are super helpful for when you're communicating because it kind of like takes away the heaviness of an argument and like it kind of like prevents us from like blaming the other person instead of saying like you made me mad, you can kind of like step back and like observe your emotions and really sit with like how you're feeling, and you can say something else like, when you did this I felt like really maybe like hurt, betrayed. Yeah, and again, like going back to the I statement, like making it bringing it back to you and how you feel, instead of like kind of like blaming the other person because it could just like make the other person shut down and like, maybe even like be aggressive, like or defensive, and it's not really like having a productive, um, yeah, solution to like an argument, right? So definitely super helpful, and I recommend the emotion wheel for when you're communicating and resolving conflict.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that
And then,
oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
so yeah, so now Irene is going to tell us a little bit more about like how to practice conflict resolution. What does that look like? And give us more examples.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Yeah, no, I think that this is a great wheel. I think it's super helpful. I think a lot of people can really quickly identify the meaning or like the emotions that are in the center. Like I'm very quick to be like, I'm mad or I'm scared or I feel happy or I feel calm or I feel sad or sometimes powerful. I think it can be like a little tricky, but usually like those feelings are pretty like easy to determine, but then those feelings on the outside are a lot harder for me to identify. So I think, for example, like if I see an article that I read, like a political article that I read, for example, and it makes me mad. I'm like, I know that it makes me mad. This is a great wheel to be like, I feel mad. Do I feel hurt? No. Hostile? No. Angry? Selfish? Hateful? No, I feel critical. Like critical is a great word. And then stepping that to like skeptical. That's what this article makes me feel. Like it makes me feel like critical and skeptical and overall like kind of mad. So I think it's a really great tool. I know a lot of therapists have this in their office on a pillow. I think it's a really great tool. I think everybody should have one on display somewhere, but that's what I'll say about it. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to practice this really quickly. So we have the formula that we had before. Um, and so we have an example here. Um, the issue that we could see at the bottom is that this, like, let's say you asked for alone time and your partner continues to text you anyway. So you're going to start by saying, here's the emotion that you feel, and here's like when they do this stuff, you're gonna say why you feel that and then what you need. So for the example given, we said, I feel angry, I feel frustrated, I feel disrespected. I probably would say I just feel frustrated and disrespected when I let you know I want some alone time and you continue to text me anyway. Um, because it makes me feel like you don't respect my boundary of wanting to have some alone time. I think that's like a perfect way of saying this. Then saying what I need is for you to be patient and trust that when I'm not texting you back, it means that I don't feel like that. It's not that I don't feel like talking, not that I don't really care about you. So I think I could shorten this up even more to be like, I feel frustrated when I ask for alone time and I don't get it because I feel disrespect. I feel like my boundary is being disrespected. What I need for you is to be patient and trust that and trust me. Short and sweet. I love keeping these short and sweet. I think it's super helpful. Yeah, this is just an example. If you would like, you can practice this with like a couple of other examples, but yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to do a quick time check. We have about like 10 minutes left. So yeah, just wanted to yeah, wrap up the conversation about communicating during conflict and just kind of like have a little summary overview of what does healthy and unhealthy communication look like. So healthy meaning you want to listen to understand. Again, that goes back to like active listening and also naming the specific behaviors, like using the emotions wheel to help you name, if you feel frustrated, et cetera, et cetera. And this is really helpful to avoid like overgeneralizing or like blaming the other person or just labeling them and discarding them as like toxic or unhealthy, right? Um, yeah,
I
because
think
it's also like, yeah.
sorry, I was
Mhm.
gonna say that I think I always see people who say that like you never listen to me, you always do this, you're always this, and I think it's
Yeah.
really important to nip that in the bud and just be like, we got to be really, really specific. It bothers me when you don't pick up your laundry. It bothers me when, and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. Being really specific and also just like, yeah, avoiding yeah, blaming one another, right? And then also working together to resolve problems instead of blaming. So, yeah, just to summarize that. And unhealthy conflict, on the other hand, can look a lot like deliberately insulting the other person, like minimizing them, kind of just like making them feel like bad or like really guilty. Yeah, without having a conversation, like shutting down, right? It can also look like being dishonest, like lying, maybe like manipulating and also hearing without listening them, right? Or like without listening to them. Because we can say that we're hearing someone during a conversation or during conflict, but we can still react defensively. So in that way, in some ways, and then at that point we're not listening, right? So I think like taking moments to like pause and like really like intake what the other person is saying during conflict can really be helpful to avoid, just like not listening, right? And for it to be like unhealthy.
And a really
So,
great way of, oh, sorry, a really great way of doing that is just by repeating what this person, what your partner said. So,
mhm,
like for example, in the example earlier, I guess like if my partner had said that to me, I would say, okay, so what I'm hearing is I should not be texting you at all during this time, and I will just trust that you will text me back whenever you're available.
mhm.
Like just saying that, like having it like the other person say, here's what I'm hearing. That's super helpful in showing that you're actually listening to somebody and not just like hearing them. So
Yeah, so and then we don't have time for this 5 minute break, but please feel free to, take a 5 minute break if you or your students need this break. It's just like certain like water sounds. Yeah, you
yeah.
can go back and pause it. I do want to show this video about the brain being under construction. So again, it's just like to talk a little bit more about, why is it maybe difficult for certain young people to, build healthy relationships and, resolve conflict. One of them is because their brains are still developing, right? So they're still learning about relationships and they're learning about relationships for the first time. So of course they're going to, struggle with resolving conflict, etc. So just wanted to play that video.
You may become a legal adult when you're 18, but scientists say 18, a grown up? Yeah, right. Hey everyone, Lacey Green here for D News. Question: when does someone grow up? It's a philosophical question. It could have to do with the life experiences someone has and the wisdom they gain from those experiences. It's also a scientific question. Being a grown-up is related to how mature you are, or more specifically, how developed your brain is. For years, scientists have known that the human brain is not fully developed until around the age of 25. Although we have all of our gray matter, which includes cell bodies and neurons, nerve fibers, and support cells, by the time we're 12, it takes more than a decade for all that matter to become fully wired and pruned for efficiency. So this is a process called neuromaturation, and scientists believe it's the reason why teens in general, share some common behaviors. So I'm talking about things like sensation seeking, risk taking, and needing to be accepted by their peers. So the teenage brain is going through a lot of critical transformations, particularly in the prefrontal cortex, which is one of the last areas of the brain to fully mature. It's responsible for executive functions like goal setting, paying attention, motivation, planning, understanding consequences, and having self-control. So the fact that these functions are underdeveloped is part of why teenagers tend to engage in risky and impulsive behaviors like experimenting with drugs and alcohol, having unprotected sex, speeding, and doing stupid things that drive their parents a little cray-cray. Right around puberty, the brain's dopaminergic reward centers also become highly active and slowly wither out as you become an adult. This makes teenagers especially prone to peer pressure. The reward centers are super sensitive to social approval or disapproval. One study found that a 20-year-old was 50% more likely than a fully grown adult to do something risky if two peers were watching. Scientists have also found that brain circuitry responsible for emotional responses are changing, making teens more responsive to emotionally loaded situations than both children and adults. So teenagers might seem like they're being really dramatic with their emotions, but the reality is they're experiencing them very intensely. They're also experiencing a lot of feelings for the first time, which can exaggerate their intensity further. Intellectually speaking, the capacity to learn will never be as high as it is when you're a teenager, and their intellectual power and ability to do mental tasks is already right up there with adults. So I think there's a tendency for grown-ups to become impatient and dismiss teens as stupid, immature, and incapable, but it helps to remember that teens are undergoing a lot of neurodevelopment. It's all part of the natural process where a human moves from dependence on caregivers to an independent, fully functional adult, which is obviously a really important time, and in my opinion, is well deserving of a little extra love and patience. Thanks for joining me for D News. Now you have the scientific end, but I want to know philosophically, what do you think makes someone a grown-up? Share your insights down below, and we'll see you next time.
Great video, great video. I think it's super relatable and very important, I think, for people to see. Because I hear definitely a lot of parents who are like, my kid is out of control. I don't know why they're like this, but it definitely makes sense when you hear exactly like the brain is just firing off like all the time there. So great video.
You may become a
All right, so we have a couple of reflection questions that you guys can talk about. The first question is just to think about like your first crush or even your first love, if that's if you can go that far. But specifically when you were like around a teenager, I definitely can think about like the times that I've had a little crush in like high school or middle school. And I can definitely picture that in your mind. So picture that person or that crush, whatever, or those feelings that you had. What did they feel like? So Sam, I think you and I could talk about this a little bit. Do you remember your like a first crush or like the first love that you ever had? Do you remember how you felt in that time?
Yeah, I remember feeling really giddy. I remember like writing a little love note and putting them the note in like his locker. I think I was like in middle school.
That's so cute. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think
Um,
he was like reciprocated, but it's whatever.
it's okay. Um, I remember my first crush too, and I remember it was just like, oh, I had such strong feelings. For my first crush, but then also like my first love. They were both very different people. And I remember like my feelings for both of them were just like so strong at the times that I had them, right? And so like that follow-up question, like how strong were your feelings? I imagine they must have been very strong. Yeah. So what if someone challenged your feelings? How did you respond?
Yeah, I feel like I was very shy as a kid and with my first crush. Um, I don't think I knew I was rejected, but I don't know. I think it just made me sad. Yeah, and I was just kind of like isolating myself. Yeah, so that was like kind of a challenge in itself. It felt like I was already like challenged. I just didn't like know emotion. And yeah, I just
Okay, I think you paused for a second. I don't know if your Wi-Fi connection is good or not, but um, yeah, I don't know what happened with your Wi-Fi connection then. Okay, all right. I can see you a little bit better. Can you,
I'm back,
sorry,
yeah.
I think did your Wi-Fi cut out?
Yeah, I'm back now.
Okay, all right. But I can talk a little bit about like for me, like I mean like with I think I guess I could talk about my first love because it's more realistic, or I guess more relevant. What if somebody challenged your feelings? How did you respond? I remember like the first person that I fell in love with being like, and then it didn't end very well. And my sister-in-law was like, it like kind of like you weren't really in love with that person, like, you know, whatever. Or like my brother, I think, also said that too. And I was like, you don't know any, like I felt so invalidated. And I was like, you don't know, like my feelings are so strong. Like I will never feel like that again. And like um, which like now as an adult, I'm kind of like, I'm sure like you know, I probably they were probably right, but at the time, like me, those feelings felt so real and so strong, and um, I felt so invalidated when they said that because I was like, but like you don't understand, like you weren't there, and like all these, you know, all these feelings that I'm sure I could laugh about now. I was like I'm older, um, but yeah, I just remember like having those feelings, and just feel and like when somebody challenged that, just feeling invalidated and then feeling like I can't talk to these people anymore. Like I can't talk to them about like my feelings and stuff like that. So for those of you who are watching this video, like I would love for you to like reflect on your first crush. Like you can pause this video and talk about it. So like who was your first crush? What did that feel like? How strong were your feelings? Um, and did anybody challenge it? Was it like a parent? Was it a sibling? Was it your friends? Like who was it? And then if they did challenge your feelings, like how did you respond? And like do you think that your feelings were real? Um, Now as an adult, I feel like I know better and I know what like real love is. But at the time I was a kid and like I didn't really know, but like that's what I thought love was. And for me, it felt very real. Um, and so I think that that is important to note that like it did feel really real for me at that time. And so this is the final step. The final step is just letting your kid know that they can come to you for help. So I think it's really important that you feel that your child, your students, your own child, whatever, they know that they can come to you. I think, luckily for me, I have a mom who I feel like I can talk to about anything. And she's like, anytime I've thought, oh, something is really difficult and this is going to be too hard for me to talk about with her, I've eventually come to her and I've told her, and she's been very accepting with like most of the stuff that I've told her. And so like, and stuff that is difficult for her to comprehend, she's still willing to have a conversation with me, and that has been really helpful. And so I think it's important that your kids feel like that too. So knowing that they can just, that you're a safe person to talk to whenever they need it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that goes hand in hand too with trust, right? I think that reflection question was super helpful because we don't want to make our children or our students feel invalidated. And I think about too, like when I had my first breakup, like as a early teenager, like young adult, or early 20s-ish, I definitely felt invalidated, like people telling me, or like friends, family being like, like you'll find someone else. And I used to hate that phrase so much. But yeah, as I grew up and I grew older, I realized like, they're pretty right. I could find someone else. So, and yeah, so I think it's just like going back to that, while you adults may want to say these things to children, I think it's always good to like, yes, like you could find someone else, but also like this is how they're feeling right now. Like they're feeling very upset, they're feeling very hurt, validating them, like being understanding that this is maybe like their first breakup or their first love. So yeah, just being validating those feelings can really go a long way with trust building. And so in healthy relationships, partners can, always be open with each other and have trust with one another. And that's super important for like vulnerability and again, like just building healthy support systems. And so some of the ways that we can build trust is reflecting, like about certain behaviors, giving their partner like space and privacy, if they need space to like check in with one another, if like there's like a big argument, maybe just like having a breather room, like, checking in later. Definitely trying not to check in via text or like, yeah, just written communication because it can be very hard to communicate and things can get lost in translation. So trying your best to communicate in person and also, and if they can't in person, maybe through phone call or video call. But definitely having that like face-to-face interaction can really help with trust. Again, so nothing gets miscommunicated. Also, just continuously like checking in about each other's boundaries. Maybe boundaries like change too. Boundaries can change over time as we change and we grow up or experience different things in our lives, right? So definitely being mindful of trust is a huge part of healthy relationship building. So for the last part of our presentation, I want to just go over quickly the group activities. So you can please feel free to pause through each slide, but it's basically a group activity where you can pair up your students in either groups of 4 or 5, and you can read through these scenarios, or even if you're just like adults, within teachers, staff, brainstorm each scenario. And, if your student or child is going through it, how would you support them through it? So, for example, the first scenario is that there's a guy who sits behind your student/child in math class and has been bothering them all semester. He runs his fingers down your back and across his shoulders every day. It makes it makes the student very uncomfortable, and he doesn't respond when your student child asks him to stop. All of the student's child's friends find it funny. So again, we have like similar scenarios to this one. And if you can just take maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, like brainstorm how you would support your student or your child like through this if they're experiencing that. Yeah, so you can just like briefly skip through the group activities. So that's another example that you can do. Again, like this is an example about a child being like kind of like having a relationship dynamic, but then they're like friends stepping in, which tends to like happen with young people, right? And also I've also heard like a lot of students like using the term like gay, right? Like using homophobic terms. So like you can use these activities to like open up the discussion about like gender, sexuality, homophobia, like why, how do those things come into play when like fostering healthy relationships, and what about like homophobia like makes it like unsafe, right? Like to be in a relationship with someone who's like homophobic, right? Okay, and then the last type of scenario is just like when just a student like may want to like cheat on a test, but or cheat with their friend on a test, but they're not like not wanting to cheat. So again, it like kind of ties in the conversation about consent, boundaries, and what does it look like if your friend wants to cheat in a test, but the other person doesn't, right? So talking through and brainstorming that would be super helpful. Okay. And so some things to remember is like practice what you preach, right? So we're modeling healthy relationships every day, right? So being mindful that when we're working with our students, with our children, that we have to model these behaviors and these actions, right? So if we're the ones who like harm them in any way or invalidate them, then we have to take accountability ourselves and like apologize to our young people as well. So learning that, and also like being mindful of those things as well. Like age dynamics too, about how, just because we think we know everything doesn't necessarily mean that we do. We can, adults can always like mess up as well. Yeah, like I said, listen, model, take accountability. And just to summarize for the entire presentation, so in healthy relationships, we want to feel equal, we want to feel safe, we want to communicate with one another, trust each other, feel good about ourselves, resolve conflict in fair ways, respect each other, and treat the other person how we want to be treated, and treat our partners how they want to be treated as well. So going back to like kind of like what you said, Irene, like the giving and receiving. Like if we want loyalty, then we should give loyalty, right? So yeah, it's always like being mindful of like having that reciprocal relationship. Did you want to add anything, Irene, before we wrap up?
I guess I just want to say, like, you remember that these healthy relationships go in like so many different ways, especially with like taking accountability. I think it's really important for adults to actually apologize to children. I think that there's a dynamic there that it's really important to show them that like somebody in a position of authority could and should apologize when they do something wrong. And so I think there's so many relationships that kids see, um, and when you grow up to an adult, like they kind of like branch off in like all these different ways. So like this idea of like somebody in a position of authority, like it goes when you're an adult, like you have a boss or like maybe a supervisor or something like that. And like there's like an important, like healthy relationship dynamic that should be there. And that is important to teach your kids as well. So I would say like all these like rules should also like these boundaries and stuff like that they should apply. They can apply for jobs, friends, romantic relationships, stuff like that. I think it's really important to teach your kids that. So yeah, that's all I would have to add.
Exactly. Yeah, and if you want to contact us, if you want to schedule certain like workshops, we teach a lot about healthy relationships, but we also teach about consent, coercion, um, also gender, sexuality. So yeah, we have a breadth of just curriculum that we give to students, to staff, to parents. So definitely please feel free to contact us. You can schedule a workshop on the website, or, if you have a young person who is going through IPV, feel free to contact our hotline. And yeah, I think that's everything for me.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, and thank you for watching.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a great day.